Record.
Hello, book babes. We are cruising through the year. We are on chapter 4, April, which is Parenthood. Lighten Up.
Dun,
I
dun,
love
dun.
this chapter because it just speaks to my soul as a mom, and that is such a big part of my identity. So some of the things that she highlights in the corner is going to be sing in the morning, acknowledge the reality of people's feelings, be a treasure house of happy memories, and take time for projects. So one thing that I've just loved about everything with this experience with us is it's divine timing.
Seriously.
And we've kind of talked that you've read this book before, and this
Yep.
is your second time reading it. And in real time today, you've had quite the parent fun today. So I was hoping that you would share with your listeners about your real time patient mom experience today.
Oh my gosh. So yesterday, I had a terrible migraine. I felt absolutely horrendous. Like it was like stuck on the couch, and I have my kids and my nieces were over, and they were taking care of me. Thank the good Lord above that they were here. They took care of me. So today I've been taking it easy, relaxing, filling my cup, all the things. I'm sitting there doing dishes, and I hear, "Mom, look what he did." And I turn around, and my child has a crown, like CROWN, crown of slime on his head.
Slime. I bet a lot of our listeners have horror stories of slime.
Oh my gosh. I don't know whose grand idea this was, but he got it for Christmas. And I've told him like every single day since Christmas, we play with slime at the table. The slime doesn't leave the table. We keep the slime at the table. And he's 4. So is he really going to listen? No, he's 4. And it's just part of it. And it is what it is. He came over to me and I said, come here. What's going on? And I touch it, try to pull it out, and it doesn't come out. And he's been trying to grow his hair out. All the boys are, for some reason. They think that's really cool. And so I'm letting them do their thing and grow out their hair. And I'm like, I get a comb and I start to try to pick it. It's not coming out. So I message my friend, I message my mom, I make a post on Facebook. Somebody help me. What do I do? And somebody said, well, baking soda and vinegar. So here I am prepping for a vinegar bath. And my mom's like, well, have you checked YouTube yet? I think that would be smart. And so I set him down in the bathtub before I dump vinegar all over him, and I check YouTube, and I find this video that is just, it says, don't do that. Like, don't put car cleaner and all sorts of random things in your kid's hair. She's like, just hot water. Like the base of it is made out of Elmer's glue. Just do hot water. But before I had stuck him in the bath, I was trying to pick at it. And I'm like, dude, why would you do this? Like, so much of me wanted to just yell and scream and be like, are you freaking kidding me? Like,
Hold you at the table.
Hear you. Yes. I literally was like, this is what ends up making us cut your hair. And of course he starts crying. I'm like, it's fine. Don't cry. I haven't yelled at you. I'm not mad at you. We're calm. We're going to fix this. And of course I'm like trying to comb it. And so it pulls on his hair and it hurts. I'm like, listen, I'm going as soft as I can. We're going to make it through this. So finally I get him into the shower where the warm water is running over his hair and he is playing with it. And he goes, Mom, this water was the best idea. See, it's coming right out. I'm like, you're so cute. Thank goodness that water worked. But as I sat there, it really kind of took me back in place because, again, I read this before and I didn't realize how it impacted me then. But before I started this, like really diving into this journey of self-discovery and happiness discovery, I was already started on my fitness journey because I just did not love my body. But with the changes I was making physically, the changes were happening inside. And I remember one time that my child, my oldest, he was like 1.5 years, maybe 2, if even. And he had walked up to me while I was doing dishes and he was like, Mommy, drink. And I got so mad, like not just angry mad. I was like, oh my gosh, like yelling at him, being so grumpy at him because he wanted a drink. And that was kind of like my light bulb moment. Like, hey, something's not right here. Like that's not how you treat a baby, right? He's less than 2 years old. That's not what a good mom does. Like, you don't want to be that kind of mom. And so it was my big eye-opening light bulb moment when I got so angry just because he simply wanted a drink. But it was because I was maxed out mentally, emotionally, physically, like all these things. And so then I made that vow, like, listen, you've got to fix whatever's going on in here so that you don't take it out on your kids, so that you're not being that mean mom. And I made a promise to myself, I am a more patient mom. I'm not that mean mom. And I want to be able, when we're in situations like this and they have a slime crown, that I can just be like, okay, let's figure it out. No yelling. And I'm so proud of myself. So let me pat myself on the back. 0 yelling, no mad, no anger. And we were able to laugh about it. And he literally, like, he was upset because he knew I wasn't happy. But I wasn't the one to express that. It was like kind of like, I'm disappointed in you sort of things versus being like the crazy yelling, whatever. And I don't know, it's just seeing how far I've come from that mom who yelled at her kid because he was thirsty to the mom who has made it through kittens had in the closet and slime on the hair and stuffing thrown out of a couch. Like, these kids, I swear they're going to give me gray hair. But I'm at a better place because I focus on my happiness, that I'm able to treat them better. And I think that that's the biggest thing. And we had a talk on Monday in our book club where we chatted with other women and just asked them about their favorite chapters. And one of the girls even said something like that. She had told us a story about her child knocking over a quart of black paint in a room. And she was like on the verge of losing it. And she just walked out of the room, walked around the house, and came back. And her child, he's old enough. And he's like, so I guess those self-help books are working. And it's like that light bulb you don't even realize. And it on our chat on Monday, we had said, like, that's the thing. Can you pass that anger test? Can you pass the paint of court test? And I was like, I did it. I passed the paint test. Oh gosh.
I love those stories because I think sometimes it's easy as moms to think that it's just us. You know, we're all the mom down the road. They're not yelling at their kids. They're not losing the stuff with their kids. They're not, you know, they're the hands-on, they're patient. And I think that, like, let's just be real. Parenting is hard. And those kids push those buttons.
Every one of them.
Every one of them. And it's not saying that you're not going to have those times where you're going to sit back and probably, you know, have the neighbors hear you screaming at your kids down the road because they did something. But there is such a power in recognizing in those moments that there are better ways to handle it. Mm-hmm. And why are you reacting like that? And I love that you talked about how you knew that you were yelling because you were maxed out, because you weren't taking that time for you first. And when you have little kids that are just constantly needing things out of you, you can't pour from an empty cup. And so I think that that's just really powerful in itself to remind moms and dads that you, and I love the analogy of when you're in an airplane and the oxygen masks come down, you put yours on first and then you put it on your kid. And why is that? Because you are not going to be able to get that mask and take care of that baby if you're passing out because you didn't put your mask on first.
Hands down.
And it is so powerful to make sure that you are breathing that oxygen, taking that time for you. That way you can pour into your kids. And then when they test you in those moments, in those slime moments, in that black paint moment, it's those tests of, hey, this is, you know, what you've been reading about. This is your true test of how are you going to react? And how you react to them is going to be how they turn and they see as acceptable to react back. Absolutely. So it's definitely founding that for those little brains.
I think that right there is so transformative in itself, realizing that you are the example, right? Like, I could tell you all day long, don't smoke, don't do like all these bad habits. But if I'm back here smoking cigarettes, what's my kid going to think? Like, it doesn't matter what I say to them. It matters what I do. Same with how you punish them. Same with how you love them. Same with all these different things. And really understanding that you are the example, and the things that you're doing now, you either get to keep those traditional generational curses, habits, or you get to break those. And I really want to kind of highlight that, because you had brought that up in our meeting, was that you decided you're going to be something different. You're going to be different, and you're making those changes to become that better person. And that's not because of X, Y, and Z, but that's because you recognize something that you didn't like, and you're like, listen, I don't like this, so I'm going to change it so that I can be better.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's really kind of been my ultimate purpose. I am a very young mom. I got pregnant with my oldest, who is now 10, when I was 17. And that has always been very intentional in the forefront of my mind of being a good mom, because growing up, I didn't have a very good parent situation. I didn't have a very stable parent situation. And I think growing up in that, you can see, especially in contrast in middle school and high school, you see your friends and they have these normal things in your life that you just don't have. You know, things like taking for granted where your next meal is coming from or where you're sleeping that night, things that, you know, your children shouldn't have to worry about. And in talks that I've had with my parents, my grandparents, this is something that's been going on for generations way past mine. There hasn't been that stability. And so as a mom, I made a very conscious choice at a very young age that my kids will have a childhood that they will not have to recover from. I want to instill these habits, and by instilling, I have to showcase these habits. I can't just expect my kids to know to drink their water. I can't expect my kids to know the power of being kind and gratitude and, you know, moving your body for 30 minutes and getting outside. I can't do justice to my kids to show them those things if I'm not doing them myself. And in return, when I do them myself, I feel better and I can show up better for them. And ultimately, that is how I am, you know, defeating those generational curses of abandonment and drug issues and broken homes and habits that you have to recover from as an adult. Now, that's not saying that I am not making mistakes along the way. That's not saying that there hasn't been hardships and things that my kids have had to endure. But I think there also is a power of resilience, and showing my kids how to get through those hard times is something that I also will make sure that they have. And that's just been my ultimate parent thing. And when I'm reading this chapter, jumping a little bit ahead, she talks about being a treasure house of happy memories.
Mm-hmm.
And without getting too emotional, that whole section is exactly what I want for my kids, because she talks about if you are a happier person, you're more likely to recall happy memories. And if you are a depressed person, you're more likely to recall sad memories. It's not that a depressed person has less happy memories, it's just that they have more issues recalling them.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I can easily get caught up in thinking back to my childhood, and I only see these really black negative spots. And so there's nothing that I can personally do to change that besides grow and accept and move on. But looking at my kids being a treasure house for those memories, and not these big elaborate like Disney vacations, but the little things like making cookies, or the fact that my kids for the last 24 hours have talked nothing else but the New Year's Eve party that we're having tomorrow, because that's just what we're doing. We're having pizza and we're baking cookies and we're going to watch, you know, the movie Soul on Disney Plus, and they are talking about that nonstop. And those are just those little happy memories that I am so intentional with creating with them. That doesn't have to be big and elaborate and expensive, but frequent. You know, just those little things, the sitting down and coloring pictures with them to give to grandma and grandpa, taking pictures. Those little things are really what I thrive in parenting for.
I honestly think that's beautiful, because when my kids made their Christmas list, their number one wish was time together. Like, I think we forget, we get too caught up in what we can buy them, what we can get them to shut them up. And I don't mean it negatively, but let's be honest, it's real life, right? It's easier to hand them a phone or hand them a tablet and just be like, hey, go do your thing. Like, guilty of that. How do you think I get work done during the day? It's part of it. but making sure that you are taking that intentional time and making those memories. They're not going to remember what they got for Christmas, but they're going to remember the night that mom planned this huge party at home and we did this and we did that and we just cuddled up on the couch. That's what they remember. It doesn't have to be the big things. It's the little things that make the biggest difference. And I love that you kind of like brought that in and up in there, because I think what we both talked about, she mentioned it in here in the part where it says sing in the morning. The thing that stood out to me is she said, parents shouldn't do anything they wouldn't want featured in an essay displayed on the wall for parent night. And that's like the big gut, like punch to the gut. Yeah.
When you hear it.
If your kid is writing a story about how you behaved today or what happened today, are you going to be proud of what's displayed, right? And we think so often that what happens in our house stays in our house, like this is our safe place. But the reality of it is that we are all humans. We all have to walk away from this experience in our homes. And so what you're giving and what you're providing for those kids, they have to walk away with that. And that's what they share with the world. Maybe not in their words, in their actions, in their behavior, in the way they love others. And so when you can be that treasure house, when you can let love in, when, like she said at the beginning of the book, when you feel better, you act better, you behave better. When you behave better, guess what? Your kids behave better. They understand what it's like to give love and to have love. And so I think that's just really beautiful.
I agree. And it's funny. So this year, Alan is in 4th grade and he came home and he was talking about, due to COVID, how his teacher's gym, her CrossFit gym, is shut down again. And he was telling her about how I do at-home fitness and that he thinks that it's so cool that I get to work out at home. And sometimes he works out with me. And if she had any questions, that she could reach out to me. And like, I didn't ask Alan to go do this. And I asked her, I was like, well, that's really cool, buddy. Why do you do that? He's like, Mom, I just think it's so cool what you do. You get to like take care of yourself and then you talk to other women and you inspire other women to do it too. How is that not an awesome job, Mom?
Fucking right. I'm with him. Why doesn't everybody want this job?
And it's just, he sees it. And it's the same with my husband. He tells me that anything that makes me doing our podcast or my workouts or my business, anything that makes that easier on me, he is happy to sit down and help me with, because he knows the impact that this has in my life. And I think that we forget that by taking care of us, that other people see the difference. Our kids see the difference. And even if, we don't think that we're doing it, they feel it. And that was kind of my confirmation with my kid that, like, I'm doing this for me, but it impacts them so much.
Absolutely. 100%. I love in this little chapter area, she talked about the days are long, but the years are short. And I think that kind of sums it all up. You're going to have shit days as a mom. Like there's going to be stressful days. There's going to be hard days. It's going to be emotional days for you, emotional days for your spouse, emotional days for your kids. But in the grand scheme of things, it is so a short time frame, right? Like you're going to miss out. If you blink, you miss it, right? Your kids grow up so incredibly fast. So it's important to me, at least, to really understand who I am so I can show up better for them in the short amount of time. I want to get as much quality intentional time as I can for them. And I love that you brought up the Be a Treasure House of Happy Memories, because walking away from this book that we did in December going into 2021, my goal is to be that treasure house. My goal is lots of intentional. We have camping trips planned. We have lots of just us being with us. That was what a lot of our Christmas was like planned around. What can we use all year long to make memories together? We made a jar, one of the gifts, because they requested time together. I made a family date jar, and it's got tons of different indoor dates, outside dates, go place dates, where all they have to do is, if they want to spend time with us, like we just draw a stick and then we do whatever is on the stick. And that gives us the time together that they want, that we want, to make those memories in those treasure houses. And I plan to do the Shutterfly memory books, where at the end of each month, I'll sit down, and it allows me to be creative. I thrive off of creativity. So where I can sit down, just share some pictures, and it makes me be more intentional in taking the pictures that we had for the month, make it, and then I can do that the next month and the next month and the next month. And then at the end of the year, as one of their Christmas presents, or maybe after Christmas, I can give them that book, and it's going to be very meaningful for them. So I just think that's beautiful.
I can 100% attest in real time to the power of pictures. My dad, right before Christmas, let me know that due to going through the basement, he found boxes and boxes of my granny's pictures. And my granny was the light of my life, my world, and she passed away in 2006. And so I got to spend the day with my dad, and I went through all these pictures, and these are pictures that I have never seen, pictures of my granny, pictures of me growing up. And what's funny is the picture that made me cry was a picture of my granny's bedroom. Mm. There's not even a person in this picture. It's just a picture of her bedroom. And it's exactly like I remember it. And it was just something really confirming of like those memories, and just seeing it and having something physical to like look at and be like, oh, those memories were a long time ago, but it wasn't just made up in my head. Like, these are real. And seeing her smile again, and just seeing and being able to talk to my dad, like, who was this? When was this? And just having those pictures truly just filled my cup up that day. And so it reminded me when we were reading this chapter that she's 100% right, because as a 28-year-old, there is nothing that has been more important to me than my dad giving me those pictures. And so I know the importance now of me taking those pictures for my kids when they're 28, when they're 40, when they can look back and see that. I want to give them the best pictures that I can possibly have given them, so that way they can remember those little things, like that day that we made cookies for New Year's Eve, or when we sat down and we did the jewelry beading kit, or, you know, when we took that family walk up to the store, just like those little things that you might not remember. Having the photo pictures of them, I think that's very powerful that she talked about that.
Well, and I love that you really cover like the little things, not just the highlights, not just the good things we did, but the simple things, right? Like simple as a bedroom. Gosh, that's just, it's heavy, but it's light at the same time, and it's very refreshing. But diving back into the book, in the little section titled Sing in the Morning, something that I wanted to bring up, because as a mom, it's easy to be the martyr, right? It's easy to say, poor me, pity me, no one helps me. Anybody guilty, right? We have to do it all. And I'm not downplaying our responsibility, because as a mom, we do have a lot of mental responsibility. At least I do. I've got to make sure my kids get to where they need to be. I've got to take care of me. I've got to take care of my business. I've got to take care of the house. I've got to plan the dinner, like all these little things. And in here, she had talked about that kind of like that weight. And she said, I also reframed by imagining that someone had offered to take over the task for me. Would I let someone else, and in here she talked about her daughter's birthday party, but would I let someone else plan X? No. The realization also changed my attitude towards the task. And I think why I bring that up is because so many times we say, no one helps me, or no one does this, no one does that. But the truth of it is, we don't let anybody do it, right? We want to bitch and complain about having to plan the party, or having to plan the vacation, or having to plan the date night with our spouse. But when it comes down to it, would we be happy if our spouse planned the date night? No, because it's not going to be what we want. Would we be happy if your Aunt Susie planned your vacation? No, because it's not what you want. Would you be happy if your 5-year-old does the dishes and there's food still on them? No, you're going to be pissed because you got to do them again. And if we could really let go of that and reframe our thinking in that situation, instead of being like, why do I have to do all this? And instead be like, okay, well, I don't want anyone else to do this, so I'm going to go ahead and step up to the plate. I think that's super, super powerful. And if you're willing to let go of some things, because I think we have to in order to be able to get through life, then I think that's really, really powerful. But what are those things that you can get rid of?
100% agree. And I think that that's kind of almost a reoccurring theme throughout this book, and that I keep seeing in every chapter is, don't be the martyr. these things that you want to get done, and are you projecting those feelings onto other people because it's not done? And I'm definitely that person. Even if my husband said, oh, I clean the house, I can clean it up after him, even after he just cleaned it. And that's just the difference in it, really. And it's just kind of almost learning to let go of some of that, and then learning to accept responsibility for the rest of it, as I think how I've learned to kind of navigate that a little bit.
I love that. And I love that you brought up feelings, because she has a section that says acknowledge the reality of people's feelings. And I think this is very, very downplayed.
This is the most tactical chapter. And that's funny that you brought up, because that's what I have opened up too, because I'm a person where I love step-by-step action. Like, tell me what to do. Give me my exact plan of exactly what you want from me. How do I achieve this? I'm okay with abstract ideas, but how do you actually want me to go about it? And she lies this out. And first off, the importance of listening, because she calls it out. I'm this mom. She talks about how she often contradicted her child's assertions of their feelings. So things like saying, like, you're not afraid, or you don't want more Legos, you already have so many, or you're not hungry, you just ate. These are my phrases. Like, these are things I feel like I'm always telling my kids.
I mean, how many other moms are like that though? Like, just listeners, raise your hand if you're that mom who's like, no, XYZ, right? Like, your kid says, I don't feel good, or I don't want to go here, or I don't want XYZ. And we're like, oh yes, come on, just give grandma a hug and a kiss, right? Really acknowledging their feelings about a situation. Maybe they're upset because of the way we are handling ourselves. And instead we say, well, suck it up, I'm the mom, right? You have to do what I say. It just is what it is. And I've gotten backlash a little bit from this, because people say, well, you're too soft. You're babying your kids. But the reality of it is, no, that's not true. Just because you acknowledge how they feel and what they're saying, that's not babying them. That's respecting them. And I think there's a huge difference in that, right? Like, sure, there's some spoiled kids out in the world, but when your kid is telling you something and you're hushing them or telling them to stop or saying no, you're just not respecting them as humans. And if we can learn to respect our kids, apologize when we're wrong. For example, way back in the day when I yelled at my kid because he wanted a drink, or when you mess up today or tomorrow or next week, if you mess up and you recognize it makes you feel some type of way, just standing up and saying, hey, I'm so sorry that I behaved that way. That's just simply showing them that you're human too. And that's going to create so much respect in that. But I just love that you shared that. Do you want to go ahead and point out the strategies she talked about?
Oh my gosh, yes. So like I said, she's super tactical about how to address the reality of people's feelings, like you said. And so some of the things that she says is write it down. So when your kid is expressing that they don't like something and they don't want to do that, she says, I'm going to write that down. My child does not like to wear this certain dress. And for some reason, you writing it down and acknowledging their feelings, that's something that she feels like works. Saying that don't feel as if you have to say anything. That is so huge. I think sometimes just don't over explain it to your kid. Don't turn around and try to have this word battle with your kid. Sometimes just pick them up and hug them. Just love on them.
That's my middle child. Okay, so him and I are totally different people, like completely different humans. He is very high emotion. He's very much an empath. And he can, like, something super simple can send him into a little frenzy. And I've learned that I could just be like, well, get over it. Well, it's okay. Well, it's fine. But it doesn't fix the problem. And sometimes all I need to ask him is like, hey, what's going to help you feel better? Is there anything I can do? And sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the answer is, taking a bath. Because a tip of advice that I had gotten is, if your kid's upset, feed them, water them, take them outside, or let them sleep, right? Like, those are 4 things that you can do. So the next time your kid's upset, you can ask them, like, hey, would you like a snack? Hey, would you like a warm bath? Hey, why don't we go outside for a little bit? Or are you just tired? Do you need a nap? I have found that those 4 things have been transformative for him. But just asking him, what can I do to help you? And sometimes the answer's nothing. And so we sit there in silence while he just is, and he just bees. that can be the most powerful thing, just because I'm acknowledging him and just being beside him, even if I can't solve the problem. You don't always have to solve the problem.
Exactly. And I think that's really powerful for kids to learn their own emotions and kind of self-soothe. I know we talk about that as babies when they're trying to sleep, but I think that's kind of as children just grow up and older, like, are they able to be in that kind of more negative space, and can they get themselves out of it by themselves? And that's not like, us moms are always going to be there. We're always going to be the shoulder they need. But I think sometimes giving them that little bit of space just to kind of feel it out themselves and figure out what is going to make them feel better. Like you said, those 4 things, those are life-changing. I'm going to write those down after this call, because
So good.
that is so good. And then I love that another thing that she says is, don't say no or stop. And this one is so simple. My kids are notorious for asking for their tablets. And I'm in this example, she's like, you say, no, it's going to not be till after rest time. No, not till after lunch. But rephrasing it is, yes, you can after we eat. Yes, you can after you take the nap. It's not changing my ultimate answer. My ultimate answer is still saying the exact same, but how I phrase it to them, making them hear the positive, makes it easier for them to acknowledge that I am saying that they can, with my stipulation, opposed to them just hearing the negative and shutting down from there. I love that one. Then she says, waving your magic wand. I think this one's really cute. Might not work on my 10-year-old as much. I think he might think I'm crazy, but I can see this on my 3-year-old, just waving a magic wand, be like, I wish that I could make it warm outside. If I could, I would wave my magic wand and make it sunny again. I think that she says, acknowledging that if you had control over the situation, you would fix it.
Yep.
And then admitting that the task is difficult. I think sometimes for us, in maybe moments of impatience or in a hurry, or just having done this before, something as simple as, these kids getting their shoes on, they've done it before, but they always struggle on the morning that you need to leave, like 10 minutes prior, that it's raining outside, and you've already tried to search for this shoe for 20 minutes before you actually found it, and now they can't get it on. And I think sometimes we just forget that maybe in that moment, they're stressed, they're having issues, and acknowledging like, hey, I know we're late. I know that getting your shoes on hard. How can I help you? Instead of just being like, you need to get your shoe on. You've been putting it on for 3 years by yourself. You better get it on right now. That's not going to help anybody.
Oh, felt that. Whew. I love those. I absolutely love those tactical tips. And I think they're so like, I can apply them starting tomorrow, right? Like starting tonight, after we get done with this, I could go and start using those. I think it's just super, effective.
Definitely. And that's what I've loved in this book in general, is she keeps such a good mix of like her thoughts, her like more abstract ideas, what she's trying, and then super tactical, broke down with her own examples, her own phrasing, down to exactly what she is saying opposed to what she used to say. And I think that in itself is really gold.
Absolutely. So one of the later little sections, it's the last section of the book, of this chapter, it says, take time for projects. And I am guilty. This kind of goes in with like being the treasure house, right? Taking the quality time with my kids. But she says to take time for projects, because projects are the highlight of childhood and adulthood, not just kids, right? Like, I know it's easier to say no to the crafts because it's messy. You're going to have to pick it up. There's going to be glitter and glue and all sorts of stuff later. It's just going to be hectic and it's just not worth it. But is that the truth, or is it just adding more to your plate, right? And I think that's the important thing, because the time that you're spending working on these projects, these are the memories that your kid's going to hold on to for years and years to come. So I think it's learning how to say yes to the mess. Like, right? Maybe it means covering your table with a trash bag. Maybe it means taking the project outside. I don't know what it means. You got to figure out what works for you. Maybe it's asking for help cleaning up the mess. But at the end of the day, it's important to be willing to say yes to those and make those memories, because you don't want to get to the end of your day and just be like, sorry, I was too busy doing dishes your whole life that we didn't take time to do anything together. And so one of her things is making sure to take time for the for the projects so that she can enjoy the process of raising kids, enjoy the process of the day to day, because the days are long, but the years are short. And so I think like this is one that I really want to take with me too.
Well, I love how even in the very beginning, she talks about how her kids give her some of the highest points of her life and also many of the moments that are not as happy. And that's so true, because like being a mom is like the hands down one of the things that I am most proud of that brings me the most joy, but is hands down also, with that said, one of the hardest things, and one of the things that I feel like sometimes I'm like, am I doing this right? And there's a picture that keeps going around on Facebook, and it's a conversation between a mom and God. And God asks her like, hey, how do you think you're doing? And she goes on this tangent about how, well, I don't do enough projects with my kids. I don't pick up the house enough. I'm not doing dishes enough. I could read them more bedtime stories. I get a little short with them. Sometimes I'm yelling. I wish I had a better morning routine and a better nighttime routine with them. I wish I volunteered more with their school. God stops. He's like, do you love them? She's like, with my whole heart. And God says, you sound wonderful.
Oof, goosebumps.
And I think that that's kind of what she focuses on, this is, you know, just making sure that in those little things that you're being present. They're not, like you said, they're not going to remember if the dishes were clean every single night, but they're going to remember that time that you took with them and just sat with them and maybe put down your phone and said, hey, what are you playing on your tablet?
Yep.
Hey, let's watch this show together. Hey, let's read this story. And I think sometimes in that little bit that she points out is just so true. And then she also makes me laugh because she talks about how you're only as happy as your least happy child.
Whoa.
And
Makes you double check yourself. Yeah.
well, and I think sometimes like we hear like the happy wife, happy life and stuff like that. And in our household, I think it's important to also remember like those are little humans that are also living their lives and learning how to live. And how are we making it easier? And I know being this screaming mom who's short every single day and isn't taking time for her and isn't taking pictures and isn't being intentional with her time, your kids are not going to be happy and you're not going to be happy. And
Yeah.
so I think this chapter is just so tactical about reminding you on what they need as much as what you need.
Well, and it all kind of circles together, right? When you take care of you, you show up better as a mom, which allows them to be better as humans, which allows you to have a better connection together. And like that's kind of the secret, right? Like that's kind of her whole research in this whole book is how can my happiness, one, how can I raise my happiness, but two, how can my happiness affect those around me? And this whole chapter sums it up. And she had also talked, one last thing that I thought was super just kind of juicy to hang on to. She pointed out the stages of happiness. We're so busy getting in a rush to go just get on to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. But if we slow down and pull out as much happiness from each individual thing. So for example, your New Year's Eve party, right? You're going to soak that up for as much as you can. You have created the anticipation. So right now, they're excited because they're anticipating it. They're planning it. They're getting pumped for it. And that's all they can talk about. They've got the countdown going, right? So anticipate it. The next is savor it. So in that moment, being able to enjoy making the cookies, being able to enjoy snuggling on the couch, being able to enjoy counting down to midnight, sitting in the feelings and understanding it, having the pictures to look back on and be like, oh my gosh, look, right? And then expressing their happiness, not just being like, oh yeah, well, this is cool. Okay, well, we're sitting here, but I'm also fighting and yelling and screaming and it's chaos. Like it's going to be chaos anyways, but you can kind of control the emotion of the room, right? So really expressing the happiness and letting it out. And so that could be as simple as you when you're making the cookies, throwing some flour in their face or just saying, I love having so much fun with you. This is the best. Sitting on the couch and being like, oh gosh, I just love snuggling, right? Like expressing out loud those emotions and feelings and letting them know that that's okay. And then recalling the memory. So this could be the scrapbook. This could be the pictures. This could be talking to grandma and grandpa about it. But being able to be like, Mom, I had so much fun yesterday. Or even you as mom saying, oh my gosh, you guys, I had a blast yesterday. Thank you so much for spending that time with me. But we're so in a hurry to just be like, on to the next thing, that we don't take the time to anticipate, savor, express, and recall. And I think that's super powerful. And I don't want to shut the door on this chapter without bringing those up, because it can be for anything in life, not just parenthood, right?
And I think that really, if you summed those 4 things up, that's just almost your success formula of intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
That's truly, I feel like, how you be intentional. Like I said, not just with like anything you're doing with your family or husband, but just anything that you want to be more intentional about, doing those action steps, making sure that you're anticipating it, planning for it, that you're actually savoring it, that you're like reminiscent of it, that you're looking back. I think those, and anything you want to be more intentional of, date nights, family nights, your work, I think that itself is a great formula that you just expressed. Absolutely. And then just, I love how in the end, she just kind of talks in the end of every month about how she feels like this overall chapter or the overall project is going, And she talks about like, am I actually happier? And she talks about like in the moments when I was neutral, like when I wasn't doing anything, I just felt the same. Like when I'm just sitting in the car or I'm just hanging out, I felt the same. But I had more happiness in each day. My resolutions had added more sources of fun, engagement, and satisfaction, and had also eliminated some significant sources of bad feelings, such as guilt and anger. And I think that just recapping this whole happiness project in general along the way, I think that's the key to remember. It's not just so you feel happy all the time in all those little spaces, but it's how those other situations in every day are balanced out. And I love that she touched on that at the end of this.
Absolutely. This chapter was great. It was super juicy, and I hope you loved it as much as we did. We are going to close out today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any big takeaways, make sure you comment them. Make sure you tag us when you're listening and sharing. We appreciate it so, so much. But until the next chapter, we'll see ya.
See you later, babes.